Zone training is based on the metabolic stresses of making energy or ATP during exercise, and lactate, which doesn't cause fatigue, is a good metabolic indicator of the different training zones. The amount of lactate in the blood depends upon how much is produced from carbohydrate metabolism, as well as how much is metabolized or removed by the mitochondria, the slow-twitch muscle fibers. For example, in Zone 1, the mitochondria, the slow-twitch muscle fibers, rely mostly on fat to make ATP, so no lactate shows up in the blood. Zone 2 requires faster ATP production, so both fat and the faster carbohydrate are both metabolized. Therefore, some lactate is produced, but most of it's metabolized in the mitochondria, the slow-twitch muscle fibers, which helps to optimize mitochondrial function, especially if it's done for 60 minutes or longer. In Zone 3, the transition away from fat and more towards carbohydrate continues, with more lactate showing up in the blood. While lactate doesn't cause fatigue, it builds up in conjunction with other waste products that do, like acid and phosphate. But lactate's easier to monitor during exercise. In Zone 4, very little fat and a lot more carbohydrate is used, and the slow-twitch mitochondria becomes saturated with lactate, meaning more lactate shows up in the bloodstream, which also means a buildup of the fatigue-causing waste products that allow for only 15 to 30 minutes of training in this zone, not long enough to optimize mitochondrial function. So think of the longer, less intense training in Zone 2 as adding components for an engine with more horsepower, which is fully utilized during aerobic performances in Zone 4, but also is training that helps reduce fatigue or the risk of engine failure when competing in Zone 4. Now, there are benefits to training in other zones, but if you don't spend enough time in Zone 2 when lactate levels are low, when you perform or compete in Zone 4 with its higher lactate levels, or more importantly, its higher fatigue potential, you won't reach your peak aerobic performance or peak aerobic horsepower. So if you want to optimize your aerobic performance, spend 1 hour or more at least 3 days a week in Zone 2. As always, my answers come from peer-reviewed research.